The depth perception thing.
Hello. All right.
Is it working?
Technical difficulties is apparently the mantra
of
2021's Wright Reasons. I think so it's getting sound. If you are here live with us, I'm going to go ahead and check the post on YouTube. But if you're here live with us, let us know if you can hear me and Kyle okay. And let us know where you're watching from. Let's see if we're live. Okay, we are. Yay!
All right, that's good.
Okay, so I just need validation from someone that you can hear us and see us.
Okay, last time you had to hold your mic for it to work.
Yeah, we got like 15 minutes into the episode before people could hear me, and I don't want to have that happen again.
No.
Amanda says, hi, boy, have we got our hands full. Yes, we do. Thank you, Isabel. We did have a good weekend. Jessica says, all good. Hey from Phoenix. Thanks, Jessica. I appreciate that.
Awesome.
And that's fabulous.
I think the camera is picking up our microphones. We're fuzzy.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. But I guess
Whatever.
rather be fuzzy and have good audio.
I'll take it.
Yeah, so sorry we're fuzzy. Hi, Cassie. Hi, Isabel. Hi, Terrence. We got a lot of our regulars here. I love it. Lydia is calling in from Massachusetts. Natalie is here from D.C. Incredible. Amazing.
Happy to be back.
Happy to be back.
So we're doing a double episode recap.
You didn't even get my joke. Rude.
Haha. So we're doing a double
someone's
episode.
here from Florida.
Oh, that's cool.
My girlfriend's from Florida.
Double episode recap. We got a lot to get through. So I don't even what.
Okay.
So we're doing episode 3 and 4, and I'm tired.
I think that one of our primary takeaways over the last 2 episodes is that a lot of the content that we've consumed has felt very produced and very manipulated.
Yeah.
There are some really important things that I know we're both excited to talk about that have happened over the last couple episodes. And frankly, these were kind of hard to watch for me. Yeah. And I'll let you obviously share your thoughts and feelings on that separately because I don't want to speak for you. But aside from Katie, who's like the MVP of this season, I haven't seen a lot of like just demonstrations of good people in the last 2 episodes. And I say that with the full acknowledgement that this cast is awesome. That the majority of these women are really cool.
Yeah.
And we got to see a lot of that. And then it's like it went away.
Well, that's because we aren't seeing any of the other women. We're seeing 3 or 4 characters focused on the entire time for no reason.
Right.
I felt, well, it was my experience that both of these episodes wasted a significant portion of my time in both viewings. I could probably take a quarter from each episode, and that's the information that I would want as a viewer of the show. The rest of it was a waste of time.
Yeah. So we're going to do what we do best, and we're going to talk a lot
Find the good stuff.
about the good and important nuggets in these 2 episodes. First and foremost, thank you all for being here. If you are here watching this on YouTube, make sure you click the thumbs up button. You have no idea what a difference that makes. It tells other people, hey, I like this video. You may like it too. And then other people find it. Also share this. If you have friends who watch The Bachelor, send them to our podcast. Send them to our YouTube channel. It's the only way that people hear about our show because we're not affiliated with a big production network or anything like that. So when you search Bachelor recap shows, it's not like our little office show that pops up. And so we really appreciate it when you do that. Are we ready?
Great. Episode 3. So episode 3 starts the same way they all start, and it starts with the cold open, and that sucks. It's constantly confusing. Yeah. I'm not used to it every single time.
And every single time we get started over.
Every time I'm like, I feel like I've missed something. They're picking up in the middle of a conversation. Nope, it's just the way they want to start the show, and I hate it.
And then we go back to where we left off, which was Sarah fainting at the rose ceremony.
Yeah.
That's where we really started episode 3.
That's right.
So Isabel in the comments just said, I have never been more heated than I was last week and this week. What went down last week was incredibly disgusting, triggering, and gave me a headache. I really shouldn't be feeling this over a reality show. I feel you, Isabel. Yeah. And B. Bean says, Katie is the only woman who consistently has empathy for the other woman. Yes, Katie is proactively anti-bully.
Yeah.
100% agree. I want to talk about, and I'm wondering if this is okay with you. Kyle and I didn't have a chance to connect about how we wanted to do the format of today's episode, so we're just going to go over it live with you as we do it.
Sure.
But I'm thinking we can talk about like the whole Sarah situation.
Oh.
From like that until she leaves, instead of being like, okay, because she pops in a lot, right? And then we all know that she ends up leaving.
Right.
So,
oh yeah, the whole Sarah
thing.
Can
we just go through Sarah's journey and wrap that?
Sure, why not?
And then anything that has to do with Sarah, we can just skip later.
Yeah, I'm going to pick out a few anecdotes that I've noticed in my notes along the way that do play into last night's episode. But yeah, I will. I feel like I forgot what was going on by the time I'm forgetting this even.
So basically, Sarah's story arc, is she comes on the show. Her dad has ALS at home, and she is struggling being on the show. She had, I believe, the first one-on-one date with Matt.
Yeah.
No, second. Bree had the first. She hit it off with him, and it started to fuck with her. It started to fuck with her that she was having these feelings, A, so early on, B, then there's this added intensity of seeing the person who you're starting to really like date other people, which regardless of your relationship design, feelings come up. Like, we're polyamorous.
Right.
And when I see Kyle leave the house with the person who we're both dating, I can feel jealous sometimes. Right? So, like, it makes sense why jealousy comes up in this situation.
Which really, I mean, that's the joke of the show, is that it's all about finding a monogamous partner, but it's a crash course in polyamory and then figuring out to be monogamous afterwards. It's confusing.
It is.
So, here's the thing that I noticed. We talked about Sarah, the whole thing, passing out right away. One thing I noticed is that Anna took time in the moment to talk shit about Sarah. Like, somehow she was doing this intentionally when she already had a rose. Her fainting spell mid-rose ceremony was for some other ulterior reason. But interesting to say that. Interesting to say that.
So this begins the pattern.
Like, Katie's helping her.
No. It begins the pattern of something is wrong with Sarah.
Oh, yeah.
And we're not being told as viewers what's going on. The women are not being told what's going on. And the producers are purposefully creating tension between the group of women and Sarah. Watching what I watched, my guess, and we've talked about this briefly, I told my mom this. I didn't even tell you this. My guess is that Sarah started experiencing clinical levels of anxiety when she was there. Whether or not she had experienced this before does not matter. But she starts feeling clinical levels of anxiety. I only say this because all of the factors make sense. And production does not allow a contestant to just stay in their room for a day. They are not allowed to do that. So when the girls are sitting around saying, I can't believe Sarah hasn't come down. You know production has said, please keep resting, like you're okay.
Yeah.
They're going to make her come down if she's okay.
Right.
So clearly she was not okay.
Right.
If production let her rest.
Yeah.
Then they have her walk in to the women after the date card arrived. Like right after. Which then immediately triggered the team of mean girls led by Victoria and now Anna to attack her. Like, they literally attacked Sarah.
Yeah.
And I didn't like, as a viewer, that we were not told what was going on, because it didn't give a clear version of what the story was. And because the women didn't know about her dad at home, they obviously also didn't know what she was going through that day, because they had zero empathy. So they were clearly told nothing. And Sarah looked like she had just had 4 panic attacks. Like, her eyeballs, I know that look.
Yeah, her face was really blank.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah. So the girls are horrible to her.
Mm-hmm.
What did you think of that part?
It's the beginning of production just showing their hand. It's this 2-episode special where production decides to write the story for us, and we don't actually see what the show is. Them, like, obviously they're going to do their own thing. We're used to, a little bit of manipulation here and there. They were so heavy-handed in the decision to throw Sarah under the bus quickly. Knowing what happened in last night's episode, thinking back about the first one, or the third one that we're talking about now, I kind of see what production was trying to do. They've been trying to raise the temperature in the house the entire time, and if they can push out an early frontrunner to bring in what we have to learn is going to be 5 new contestants in the next episode, they're really, what I feel like I'm watching is Survivor. They're just swapping teams and islands, and everybody's got a different thing, and there's new players, and there's old players. It's a lot of gimmicks going on. And I think production, I don't know, I get bored when production starts doing things like that.
Yes.
Because there's going to be plenty of actual drama on the show, and having Sarah walk in just so the girls who are unhappy with themselves can tear her apart.
Right. So,
and also, we do know that there's some sort of vulnerability going on, and we do know what her past is and what her dad's going through, because we've seen the ITM, so we know that they're jumping on her, but no one else does, because that would, as someone in the comments says, really piss them off. Like, that gets the viewer also emotionally connected.
The thing is what, yes, and what really bothered me about the way that the women handled that conversation/confrontation is that it was never actually said what they were upset about. So some of them were saying, I'm upset that she came to the group date. Other people were saying, I'm upset that she was upstairs. Other people, like Victoria, could have been upset that, like, she picked her nose with her left middle finger instead of her right ring finger. Like, they were going to find anything, but it was not clear to me. They did not say, you did this, I felt this, I'm hurt and frustrated, right? Like, and Sarah directly apologized to Katie. Katie was like, thank you for your apology. Great, mature humans.
Yes, thing. That's right.
And Terrence reminds us in the comments, Kit literally says, I hope your connection with Matt is worth it, because your living situation is going to be horrible here. She says that to her. What has Sarah done to them? The biggest thing you could find is taking away 10 minutes.
She has been more attractive to Matt than they are.
Yeah.
I hope Kit gets pooped on by a pigeon when she comes back to New York.
So I didn't like that.
Pooped on by a pigeon.
So Sarah ends up deciding to go home. Again, I really wish we got more of this. Like, we saw her have conversations with Matt, but the conversations weren't addressing what was happening fully. Yeah,
they didn't show it to us, or it didn't happen. I don't think she's gone. I think she'll show up.
Wait, really?
Sure. It's
not
uncommon.
But her dad has ALS. She wanted to go home.
Right. And after getting
But then she'd have to quarantine.
I don't know. I'm just telling you. I would not be surprised if she shows up at some point. Just because that's the show, right?
I would be shocked. I really don't.
You really think she's for real gone? These
women threatened, like, she couldn't even sleep in peace and her dad could die tomorrow. Yes, I think she's gone. Given COVID.
We'll see.
It's also with COVID.
Right.
That's the other thing. It's like, because they can't leave and come back the way that they would.
Right, and maybe she didn't actually leave production. I don't know. All I'm saying is that I don't buy it 100% just because the show has trained me to not really believe what I'm seeing.
I will say, though, like this whole idea, I see a lot in the comments of people saying mob mentality or groupthink taking over.
Yeah.
We cannot use that as an excuse as human beings. They're on a show, like they're on a dating show. There is zero reason to threaten someone's living space. Like, it's not acceptable. Like no. It is a zero tolerance thing to me. This was so clear cut bullying, and I would have left too. Like it was just so clear cut.
Yeah.
And I think that Matt and Sarah will probably end up, if they don't date later on, they'll probably end up being really good friends because it seems like they have a lot in common. And so we miss Sarah. Sarah, we wish you all the best if you happen to watch this, and sending your family so many prayers and love and good vibes and all that good stuff. And good job for making a decision that was really hard.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we keep scrolling through here. To respond to what's one of the comments, was it irresponsible for Sarah to join the show with her dad's situation? No, because she volunteered to go be a caretaker. We don't know what's going on there just because I don't think it's irresponsible. Like, it was her own feelings and thoughts that led her to leave the show. As far as we know, she didn't get a phone call as an emergency. Like, I think irresponsible, maybe not.
I think it probably depends on your own definition of what irresponsible means. Mm-hmm. I don't personally think that it was irresponsible. She said that her dad had given her, his blessing, that the family was really supportive. I do think, though, that she could have thought through a bit more about what it would be like on the really hard days. So, like, not just the hard days in terms of missing her dad, but what happens when she's missing her dad and it's hard on The Bachelor.
Yep.
Because people break on the show without having something hard at home. So given both, like, I'm not surprised she cracked.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the rose ceremony.
Yeah, we'll skip the...
So Kayla, Mari, MJ, Anna, Kaylee, and Marilyn, who I literally forgot about, went home, which unfortunately Victoria stayed and Marilyn went home. And Victoria says something along the lines of, Marilyn's gone and now Sarah needs to go. Sarah is worse than Marilyn.
I wrote down Victoria's the person who kicks somebody after they get knocked down in a fair fight. I don't like Victoria.
Danny in the comments here says, Sarah said that in an interview that Bree and Rachel were the first ones to come and talk to her and comfort her after the confrontation. That's awesome. I really like Bree and Rachel. I like Katie too.
Yeah.
So then we go to a commercial and we come back and it is a fresh week. There are going to be 3 dates. Now, as we know, Sarah's going to leave. Okay. So the group date card is first. And it's Rachel, spelled wrong, Bree, Lauren, Kit, Serena C, Victoria, Kaylin, Anna, Kaylee, and Katie. And the date card says, today is a surprise for everyone, Matt.
This date, if I believe we're speaking about the same one, felt like watching a sex scene in a movie with my parents. It was so uncomfortable for all of the reasons. It was just so...
I hated this date and I love sex. Can I I want to really put this out there. I'm probably the most sex positive, not the most, it's not competition. I'm a very sex positive person.
Yeah.
I'm a sex therapist. I'm a sex educator. I want them to talk about sex more on The Bachelor. This date made me want to crawl out of my skin into the couch and die. It was also part date, part advertisement for Chris Harrison's book.
Oh,
that's apparently part erotica, which also made me want to die. And then Ashley I is there. Why is Ashley I there?
Oh yeah, I forgot. I had actually blocked that out. That was nice.
They did that because she had the virgin narrative on the show, and now she married someone from the show. So guess what that means? She's not a virgin anymore. She was actually very funny in this episode, as Matthew says, which was funny.
So, obviously, out of all of the poetry, Katie gets, the most graphic, most ridiculously over the top, and yet everyone seems to be sort of enjoying it. I wrote down, after Katie's thing, all the girls going to go masturbate, because everyone seemed to get a little distracted at that point.
Honestly, some of the stories were hot.
So, in terms of
Although
awkwardness is one thing, sure. I also wrote down that it is one of the healthier sex-positive dates we've seen because they shared some, not Victoria, shared decent attempts at actual erotica, including Matt. They did their best. Last night's episode just walked back any amount of progress that the show has made on sex positivity, but whatever. They did good for a second.
Yeah, what I will say, and what I will give kudos to before I know where you're going, I want to appreciate the fact that we had a date that was focused on sex positivity. The fantasy suite was brought up in the way of that is an opportunity to have sex. It wasn't just brought up for private off camera time. The bleeping was hilarious because they can't say anything on ABC. So it's she beep, her bleep, and deep. And it was just really funny to listen to. I felt like a little kid. But then.
Well, I mean, I was talking about what happens on last night's episode in terms of the walk back.
I thought you were going to talk about Victoria going up.
Oh, no, I just want to erase that from my memory.
Got it. Okay, so I put overall, this is an excellent and awkward sex positive date. And then the after party for the group date, Matt and Rachel are talking. And what I wrote down with this is that we're seeing that there's very clear chemistry and connection between them, and a relationship is forming, but we're not actually seeing it.
I caught myself thinking about that watching the episode this morning when you were finishing it up, because we saw her a little bit. She's got one of those people that I keep forgetting about because you don't see them very often, but then all of a sudden they'll be in the top 5. We won't see her for a while because she's not involved in anything.
They're not involved in the drama,
and that's fine. And then she's getting no screen time, so all of a sudden she'll pop up in the end, and someone's going to be like, "Hey, how'd you get here?" But this is why.
They're airing some really good conversations, which we'll get to. And I like her, and it's very clear that they have a connection, and I want to see what they're talking about.
Agreed.
And then the girls, this I put in bold. The girls talk about how nice it was hearing about each other's desires and how nice that would be to normalize. So what I wrote down as a note to myself to tell you listening, if you're podcast ears and didn't see my hands, is this in a sex positive and or ethically non-monogamous community would be a group game night. I could see a world in which there is a get together and everyone gets up and reads a sexual fantasy of theirs, right? It's a bonding activity for people who are comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
The fact that these women were wow, that felt so good.
Well, and that
maybe
also,
I could share more.
That also speaks to their honest attempt at doing it and not making it not like Victoria.
Yeah.
There were some honest attempts at it, and so I think that's why it was a healthier experience. Healthier, I guess.
Yeah, so it was really cool, and I think that the women that were on that date bonded a lot.
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
And then the date card comes for Serena.
Yeah, so Serena P gets the date card. Let love lead the way. Then I wrote.
So then we have.
I'm skipping the Sarah stuff because we already covered that. Blah, blah.
See, this is why we did it.
Yep.
Yep.
And
More Sarah.
Rachel gets the group rose.
There we go.
All right.
So this was exactly where I wanted to get the Sarah stuff out of it, because the whole last week's episode was like other women Sarah, other women Sarah, other women Sarah, other women Sarah, and it was like,
yeah. I wrote down Anna is upset ? Angry ? And then after the commercial, Rachel has comments. I don't know what I wrote down this for, but do you have comments after the commercial?
No. So basically, that is the end of the important content for that week. I literally just scrolled through the rest. One of the things that I really, really liked, and I just wanted to reiterate before we move into the next episode, Matt tells Sarah, I don't want to lose you. And Sarah says, quote, this is really hard. Thank you for saying all of that. I've thought about this and I've prayed about it, and I just feel really called to go home and be with my family. I don't think I'm ready for this. I wish you could see my heart. I am so sorry. And Matt says, it's okay. Don't apologize. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop thinking about you or praying for your dad. When you're ready, some guy is going to be extremely lucky. I've learned so much from you already, and I'm going to miss you. And Sarah in the car says, this isn't the best, Sarah, and Matt deserves the best. And it was a really beautifully handled, sad,
very honest
thing.
Yeah.
Bean in our chat says, American culture does not normally talk like that in public. So I disagree. I think that American culture
like sharing erotica?
Talks about sex all the time. I think that we just do it silently and shamefully.
Yeah, or through metaphor and analogy.
Or online and anonymously.
Watch How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah.
So one thing, I did write down some stuff from Serena P's one-on-one. I think we're there.
Oh,
right?
yeah, we totally skipped over that. We'll do that and then we'll jump to the next episode.
Yeah, there's only a few things that I pulled out of this one. I caught a weird thing, and so obviously I don't think that this is an actual thing, but it sounded odd, and I picked it out and wrote it down. When Matt was talking about going on the date with Serena, he says what she lacks in height, she makes up for in character, which would suggest that he finds short people, or people shorter than him, somewhat lacking or less than, which, I mean, is a unfair thing to say when you're born the height that he is. Not that he's born at that height, he's ridiculous. But, and obviously, if you question him, like, do you really think that he'd be like, oh, God, no, that was terrible phrasing. And I thought it was hilarious because, I mean, the two of them together, yeah, she's like half his height.
Yeah.
But what I liked about it is that she is aware that she's approached him slower than the rest, and getting physical isn't a thing that she does right away, but she is going over and, making some progress. They have really, really good banter over charcuterie. Yeah.
They had a good date.
Yeah, they had a good date. Her dad wasn't supportive of her going on the show, and she very articulately explains how she doesn't agree with all the normal things that you're supposed to do in life and fit the same cookie-cutter role, which I appreciate. It was nice to hear someone say you don't have to, do all the things that you think you're supposed to do and have an unsupportive parent, but not make that their emotional pain. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Usually that's a big deal when a parent doesn't want them. But she's like, my dad didn't like it, but I like to do what I like to do, so...
Right.
Here I am.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's just take a quick pause between episodes. If you're here with us on YouTube, click that thumbs up button on the video. Make sure that you say hello in the comments and share this video. And if you are listening to the podcast, listen, rate, subscribe, share, all the things. Bean says Matt is 6'5". Yeah, that's insane. That's insane. And I really, really, really appreciate the comment about how American culture doesn't talk about sex normally, because Bean, truly, that is true in terms of Americans' attitudes towards it. The majority of America. The problem is that we are sexual beings. We are all here because of sex. There's a reason, we're sexual beings.
Our brain stops when we read the word.
So not talking about it openly, Imagine if we were not supposed to, in quotes, talk about food.
I was literally going to say food.
Like, it's the same thing. Hunger is the same type of feeling as feeling horny, right? We need a release. We need food. Like, sex is literally on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need it to survive as humans. But we're so uncomfortable talking about it, which is why dates like the erotica date exist, because we have to put it in this container of this is supposed to be sexual, so you're allowed to be sexual.
Right.
Rather than you're allowed to be sexual whenever you want in your day-to-day life or not.
Right. It's dates like that or containers like windmills, things like that, where it's appropriate for sex to exist.
Yes.
So I did write down one summary of Matt and Sarah's goodbye. I wrote down, it's clear this is right people, wrong time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, had things been different, clearly the I think foundation's there. Yeah, and then that's the end of the episode. I wrote, she said, he said, no rose next week.
Yeah. So then we get into
Cold
week
open
4.
fucking sucks. It's my first little thing.
Yeah, the cold open's bad. The cold open sets us up for quite the episode.
Oh, God.
So we start out with a cold open, and it's Anna talking to Victoria on a couch. And she says, I've heard people say, oh my God, watch out for this girl. And Victoria says something like, what do you mean? And she goes, Anna says, she's an escort.
Entertaining men for money.
She entertains men for money.
And that could be a lot of things. You could be
Now,
a magician
literally.
for men.
We are going to have a talk about sex work on the show because the show brought it up in a way that is incredibly irresponsible, not educational, and shameful. So we're going to get into that. But first, let's actually address what happened.
So, I mean, starting with the cold open that we get of Anna talking to Victoria about one of the contestants that we don't know who we're talking about yet. Let's just take stock and observe the behavior that's happening. Anna, who seemed a little over-caffeinated by her own decree early on, is speaking to the person who has been the worst person in the house the entire time, aggressively toxic and cruel to people. If you're trying to get validation from that person, it's probably not a good thing you're getting validation on. Right?
Yeah.
Right? Anyway,
so
pointed that out.
It cuts perfectly away from that, and then we jump right into the women all sitting around, and Victoria says the trash took itself out about Sarah leaving. And this is after like a while they're bantering, they're talking.
Right.
And Katie says, can you stop? Seriously? There's no point in keeping talking about her. Like, she's not here anymore. And Victoria says, no, I won't stop, Katie. And then we cut to in the moment of Katie explaining that essentially, which becomes the theme of the episode and what she ends up talking to Matt about, is that there's bullying going on in the house and that there are false things being said, there are mean things being said, and that it's not a healthy environment. And that, frankly, it got to a point where, like, she thought that he needed to know. Yeah. And the way that she did it was so beautiful. Yeah. It was great.
Yeah, Katie's by far my favorite. So, I mean, I have a very similar breakdown of that, but mine's simplified to say Victoria talks shit about Sarah. Katie calls her out. Victoria acts like a child. Katie explains to us why Victoria is so terrible. Yeah. We get to the group date pretty quick, right?
They're on it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I notice now MJ's beginning to display that she is starting to, like...
23. Like, her age is starting to come out.
I mean, I was also constantly being a dick to people around me when I was 23. So, with the view that I had when I was 23, she began saying kind of rude and mean things about the other contestants in her in-the-moment interviews. Up until this point, she hasn't been like that. So to me, I'm seeing the producers are targeting her to get something out of her because there's not a lot going on otherwise. So MJ is going to freak out at some point. Matt's worried about letting his guard down.
So he says, am I doing the right thing in letting my guard down with these women? Can they handle it?
He doesn't look good, that's right. He's super reserved with all these interactions.
Yep. He says that, because Sarah just left.
Yep.
The day started off difficulty? Yeah. The women helped him feel really good about being there. And finally, we get to see Chelsea, the runway model from Brooklyn. Yes, Brooklyn. And she and Matt end up having a really, really great conversation. I'm so glad that they aired it. And Chelsea talks to him about her hair. And she has a shaved head. She's a black woman. And she told him, she said, I don't think people realize how emotional hair can be, especially for black women. And she tells him that she's been chemically straightening her hair since she was 2 years old to try to fit in, blend in, have it be a certain way. And that shaving it was an emotionally freeing and huge experience, and shares with him this story and a photo of her before she had shaved her head. And it was this really wonderful conversation, and we had not gotten to see anything from Chelsea yet. So I was really, really happy about that. And I loved this conversation.
Yeah, it was fantastic. And they're really, really connected, the two of them. Like, there's a great foundation there. I don't see, like, a full-on, like, thing. I think that they're the people on the show. Obviously, it could be, because in a vacuum. But, yeah, it was I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
And they make out.
And I really want to honor the fact, like, ABC, the things that they choose to air versus to leave on the cutting room floor are often decided by who the viewership is, right? Because who's going to watch the commercials, and then the advertisers pay for ads, blah, 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 blah. So having a conversation about black women's hair has not been something that they've ever aired, aside from when Rachel was Bachelorette, and it was very minor. And I was really glad that they dedicated some airtime to this conversation.
Yeah, it was appreciated, ABC doing the bare minimum.
Correct.
Right, it's nice.
Yeah.
So there's another Victoria Katie talk, and so I just...
This is when she asked her to sit down to talk.
So they sit down to talk, and so I didn't write down anything they said. All I did was a boxing-style play-by-play, which was Victoria and Katie talk. Victoria opens by being an asshole. Katie responds like a human. Victoria's being an asshole. Katie drops the hammer. Katie drops the hammer. Katie shuts it down. Matt gives Chelsea the rose. I don't know what Katie said to her, but Katie won that one.
You know, my notes don't go against that, so we'll just go with that. So then we go to commercial. We come back, and there are 18 women there. 3 of the women there, of the 18, have roses. So Sarah left. It was 19, then 18, and 3 have roses. The 3 that have roses are Serena P, Rachel, and Chelsea.
Yeah.
Okay, so then they cheers. We get to see a montage of pleasurable one-on-one time exchanges. We see Piper, we see Kit, we see Katie, we see Bree, we see Victoria, and then Chris Harrison interrupts.
Of course.
So Victoria is sitting with Matt, and Chris Harrison walks up, and basically all we see is, like, him be like, come here. And then they spend, like, time just walking through the hotel.
You got, like, a million quick cuts of them, like, walking through various doors.
It took so long. And I was like, we all saw it in the preview. There's new women. Like,
what's going to happen, do you think?
Guess what? There were new women.
Okay, we're not watching Survivor, though, right?
No.
Okay.
I know.
I keep forgetting.
I know. So, the new women. Brittany, 23, model, from Chicago, kisses him without consent. I will say the rest of the episode, I really liked Brittany. This one move, not cool. Please ask consent before you kiss someone.
Very Demi to Colton, if we want to go that far back. Yeah. And also, Victoria slut-shames her for doing that. But then in the previous episode, I think Victoria asked Matt to kiss him, and then as he pulled away, she like extra went in on it. So let's just not throw stones, Victoria.
Victoria called her a schlor.
Which is...
She says
Jesus.
She is a slut and a whore because she interrupted my time. So let's just paint this picture clearly.
Wait, so when Chris Harrison walked over...
Chris Harrison came over on behalf of production to be like, hey, Matt, we have 5 more women coming in because it's a TV show.
Yeah. Surprise.
And Victoria was like, it's that chick's fault. She's a slut and a whore.
Yep.
That's literally what happened.
Yeah. I mean, that's exactly what happened.
B-Bean in the chat says Matt could have stopped the kiss with Brittany. So
you're also on TV.
When
probably
going
on.
What?
Well, like he's surprised walking back out there. Like I think the kiss walking out of the limo is not an unknown thing. That's a pretty common trope for The Bachelor to have that. I don't know.
No, I think it's not okay under any circumstances. Like,
saying
right. No. Hold on, pause. Saying that Matt could have stopped the kiss is like saying a victim can stop from being assaulted. Like, the kiss was on his face. Like, she kissed him. Yes, he could have said stop now, but it was already done.
Right.
Like, she made physical contact without his consent first. That's the problem.
Right.
That's where
Right. We do find out later on that he brings that up with her and says that he loved the confidence, like the assertiveness and all of that. And also, there's a difference. It's the result of our culture having all these romantic movies where the guy grabs the girl and kisses her no matter what she's saying.
I know.
Or to make her stop speaking, which is super weird when you think about it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad.
1 second. Okay.
So then we get
Michelle?
Yep, Michelle.
I wrote She's So Sweet.
Teacher from Minnesota. Ryan, 26, who's a dancer and choreographer. And Kim, an ICU nurse. And Catalina.
Mrs. Puerto Rico.
Miss Puerto Rico Universe, I wrote down?
Yeah. Miss Puerto Rico. Is it Mrs. or Miss? It's Miss Puerto Rico Universe. Miss.
You're not. Yeah. It's not a marriage.
You're not married to Puerto Rico.
It's not a marriage competition.
So speaking of consent and Victoria bringing it up later on, she also snags the crown right off of Catalina's head without saying anything.
Catalina walks into the room and Victoria literally says, I'm the queen here, and takes the crown off of her head.
Now, do you think that was her actual, like, pageant crown? Because those are, like, worth, like, that's not, like...
they're legally required to wear it. So women who win...
No shit, really?
Yeah.
Like when they show up as themselves, not like in their day-to-day. That's ridiculous.
Right, like if you're saying like, I'm Miss Puerto Rico, you better have that crown on.
The sash and crown go together, that makes sense.
I don't know if it's a sash.
No.
But I do know that the crown is like part of the uniform.
Interesting. I had no idea.
Yeah.
Who knew?
So Matt gets very overwhelmed that there's new women. The women are pissed that there's new women. And I wrote down, does anyone realize the production is in charge of this? Like,
So this is I referenced in my notes here in a different format, but it reminds me of this. It reminds me of Pete's season. What we're getting is, granted, I think Peter has a little bit more direct responsibility in what happened in his, and I will say this, we're getting another Bachelor season in which the contestants are starting to get angry at each other, and somehow the lead
for production
things.
Choices.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we saw Peter's season devolve almost immediately with like ridiculous things going on, and I'm getting that same, like, it's like an itch in my head. I'm like, why are they doing this? It's not why I'm watching the show. Ridiculous.
So I just want to address, there are some comments in the chat going back and forth about how it was basically okay that Brittany kissed him because that just happens, and that because Matt is so tall that he had to lean down to meet her, so that therefore he was consenting. This is part of a bigger problem beyond like us here and beyond The Bachelor, is that we don't teach what consent is in sex ed.
Mm-hmm.
So by the law, Matt did not consent to that kiss. By the letter of the law, Matt did not consent to that kiss. And arguing against that only perpetuates having people receive things on their body that they don't want.
Mm-hmm.
Like, enthusiastic consent, the reason why it's called enthusiastic consent is because it's like, fuck, yes, I want this. It is so sexy to say, I'm making up for lost time and I would like to kiss you now. Would that be okay with you, sir?
That'd work.
Right?
Yeah. Because it shows the intention behind it, not just doing it and then explaining it.
So, we don't want to keep, we want the standard across genders to be the same.
Right. I mean, the argument here is the same thing. Like, Colton could have picked Demi up and threw her across the room when she tried to do it, but that's not the point.
Right. Like, of course Colton could have, like, he could pick Demi up by her pinky.
But, yeah.
Right.
Anyway, we get a quick commercial, and we come back to Anna starting to lose it. And that's what we're talking about. The contestants are immediately expressing their upset at Matt. He seems to be receiving it. He is aware that he's receiving some flack and is very clearly not, like, stoked on it, but also seems to know why.
Well, and you can even tell by this episode, like, we're not talking about his relationships with the women.
Yeah.
We're talking about societal issues. We're talking about bullying. We're talking about, like, I'm looking at my list and I'm like, oh, cool. Well, yeah, we get to talk about sex work next.
We're getting common things, though. We're having Kayla being upset at the new girls, but isn't going to get Matt's attention. We get Mari assuming what Matt is feeling about the new girls, but not asking him or going to get his attention.
Yep.
She keeps saying that, oh, well, there's always shiny new things around. Shiny new things. That's very, like, sitcom-y disrespect of men.
And at one point we get, it's not like a voice over, but it's like a voice clip. And I couldn't figure out who said it. But someone says that Matt forging the relationships with other women is triggering. And I wrote that down specifically because...
Who says that?
And honestly, it doesn't matter.
Right,
the reason why I wrote it down is because that is a wildly incorrect use of that word. And in no circumstance would Matt forging relationships with these other women be triggering. Like, I was trying to think of any circumstance.
Yeah.
And I can't. No. So that... I just wish that, like, we could get appropriate language aired. Like,
I know.
If someone said that, okay, but maybe don't air it because then the word triggered
is being misused.
Yeah, and I would love to know. I would love to know from you guys what the word triggered means to you. In the chat, Terrence says, "Not every single kiss you're going to ask for permission. Sometimes you just lean in and do it."
I mean,
if you're just meeting someone for the first time, there's not really a reason to not ask for consent. It's
and then we're also getting into the issue here in which we're all taught growing up that it is, my generation growing up, you're supposed to read physical cues. There's like a thing you're supposed to, like, somehow interpret if the words themselves aren't said, because, like, that's something else you got to do. So that's confusing, and there's really no, as far as I understand, there is no information being given out, at least for our generation, about, like, hey, maybe talking about sex is healthy instead of trying to read each other like Rubik's cubes and seeing what, like the braille of foreplay. What's that about?
So this is not like an agree to disagree or like a I have my opinion and, like, there's this other opinion and da-da-da-da-da. It's very black and white. Like, either someone consented to a kiss or someone did not consent to a kiss. And a kiss is a sexual act. Like, sex is defined as a meaningful experience of pleasure. Kissing is under the umbrella of a sexual act. The fact that you can get herpes from kissing, and herpes is considered an STI, tells me that kissing is a sexual activity. Now, it's not always a sexual activity, right? We kiss our grandmas on the cheek.
Yeah,
we kiss our brothers on the forehead, right? Like lots of other things like that.
Totes.
But we're watching The Bachelor. It's a romantic setup. Therefore, sexual activity.
That's the point.
Therefore, 100% of the time, consent is needed. I do not mean that every time you're then with that person, may I touch your leg now? May I kiss you now? That's not what I'm talking about. But getting out of a limo with no relationship at all.
Right.
She doesn't know. Matt could have been sexually assaulted when he was a kid. And landing a kiss on his lips could have actually triggered him. Like.
Yeah. And that's.
Exactly. And that's why consent is important. So I really want to name that because I know that we're going back and forth in the chat with a few people about this. And I'm not trying to be like a stick in the mud about it. I'm trying to explain that if someone does not say, yes, I want your body on my body, don't put your body on their body. Like, it's just that simple.
Right.
And I don't think that there was any malicious intent here. I don't think that she did anything on purpose, like wrong or bad or yucky. I just think that we need to have this conversation about consent because had this been a male exiting the limo kissing a female, there would be no discussion. It would just be that was not okay. So I really want to make sure that women and all genders are being held to that standard.
Agreed. Very much so.
Cool.
Yeah, and the problem is that our society teaches you're supposed to like have the romantic moment where no one says anything, and it's like this wordless commitment to do. Also, you know that famous photo of the sailor kissing the nurse in on V-Day in World War II? That famous thing. He was a drunk dude running around the streets, grabbing every woman he could see and kissing them. The photographer was following him, waiting for a good shot. Real story.
Wow.
How about that?
So it was really funny. At this point in the episode, we were watching, our girlfriend was over, and she's like, what is with all this extra drama? This is not what we need in 2021. Yeah, no, and I was like, yeah, seriously.
Yeah, I wrote down, Anna looks like she can smell a skunk.
Her facial expression.
Roses go to.
Okay, so we hit the rose ceremony, and as we said, Serena P, Rachel, and Chelsea already have roses.
Yeah.
Roses go to
MJ, Piper, Bree, Maggie, Michelle, who's new, Mari, Ryan, who's new, Kit, Serena C, Abigail, Katie, Victoria, I wrote why, she's taking the place of someone else, it's bullshit, Lauren, Brittany, who's new, Jasenia, Anna, also about to lose her mind, Catalina, who's new, Cheers, and the OG is upset.
So going home is Kayla, Kaylee, and Kim. So one of the new women and two of the quote-unquote OG women.
That's right, because MJ has to explain.
Yeah. She explains that OG means original group. So then we get an actual preview of the episode. So it felt like at this moment the episode actually started, although we were like a third of the way in.
By pulling teeth. Really, this episode. Okay. New morning, I wrote blah. That's about right.
I will disagree with you. I think that it felt more like pulling teeth with week 3. This week's episode felt way better to me in terms of like actual movement.
Yeah.
I don't know, though. They were both pretty good.
All right. So I wrote more dumb Victoria stuff. I don't think we need to touch on whatever that is.
Yeah. Chris walks in, acknowledges the ladies. He brings in the group date card. It's Mari, Bree, Abigail, Brittany, Ryan, Catalina, Maggie, Anna, and Victoria. And it says, let's fall in love, Matt. And then Ben Higgins is there. And Ben Higgins created a fall in love fest where they have to do this whole relay race. This is a very fun date. It's very silly. They all look silly. Maggie gets stuck in a pumpkin. It's so funny. I made a gif of it. I'll put it up on our Instagram.
Mari won it, but Maggie really wins.
It was so great. And so we're an hour and 5 minutes into the episode, and it's just now the evening portion of the group date.
Jesus Christ.
All right.
So here we go. We have Anna Matt pulls Anna right away when she's like, no, I'm so happy about that. I questioned, is she going to use her time to talk about him, or is she going to talk shit about someone else the entire time, which is usually a pretty good 50-50 split at this point. But, of course, Brittany shows up to interrupt them. And if you don't think for a second production was like, hey, Brittany, come here, go interrupt Anna, isn't that going to be awesome? If you think for a second that's not why Anna came, or specifically Brittany was interrupting Anna, then I don't know what to tell you. Anna says no to Brittany. She wants a few more minutes, which I think is a fine response, honestly.
100%.
Then proceeds to get angry anyway. She stood up for herself. She stood her ground, dug her heels in, but then jumped off the cliff by herself. And she ended up in the pool, in the mental pool with Victoria. Not a good place.
So this is where we start the horrible backslide.
So she mentions that she thinks the new girl is entitled to time. And it's disrespectful for her to have that time. And then she says that she knows stuff about her and goes to talk to Victoria about it. I'm sorry, but no one's entitled to shit. Go get your time or don't, and then don't complain about it. Also, production is actively helping you or stabbing you in the back. So, you're on the show. Anyway.
So Anna says what we see in the cold open. Oh my God, watch out for this girl. She's quote unquote entertaining men for money. Then we hear Victoria say, that's insane. Then Anna says there's a rumor that because she knows all the rich men in Chicago, that she's an escort. Then they started talking about how because she may be a sex worker, then she's clearly manipulating Matt with sex. So,
with her
but
continue. Okay.
As though no other woman on The Bachelor. So, okay. I have so many things to say about it. I want to put apart the rumor and the sex work for a sec and just look at if she was using their sexual chemistry as a way to move the relationship forward.
Katie brought a vibrator right away.
Yeah.
So
the first thing I want to name is that there is nothing wrong with sex work. We have a very firm stance on that in our community, on this podcast, on the show. There is nothing wrong with sex work, consensual sex work with adults.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't pole dancing categorized as sex work?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
ever been to a strip club?
There are a lot of things that are considered sex work that you may not, or many people may not associate with quote unquote sex work. We hear sex work and we think of this old like 90s archetype of like a prostitute on Law and Order SVU.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Underneath the bridge somewhere, it's always wet for some reason. That's exactly what you think about.
And like the word prostitute. Like it's very like...
Yeah. I'm thinking about Stabler and Benson and they're chasing someone through the street.
So I want to first acknowledge that there is nothing wrong with sex work. Whether you are a dancer, an escort, whatever you are, there's nothing wrong with it. Period. End of story. Now, and our culture disagrees with that as a whole collectively. That's why it's still illegal, right? If you think about why is sex work illegal? I don't know. I don't know why it is legal for someone to pay me X amount of money for my time to sit next to them and do nothing. But they could pay me that same amount of money. I could come sit next to them and do nothing. But if it was through an escort service, I would be considered a sex worker. I could never have physical touch with someone else. And be considered a sex worker.
Yeah. You can be a sex worker and never see another human being.
Right. You could just stay at home. Yeah. And as B-Bean said, alcohol used to be illegal too. Exactly. Pot, look at how the pot legalization is going.
Human beings hate prohibition. It doesn't work. We've proven that a million times in a row.
So I just want to name that. Like, even if, let's say the rumors are true. Let's say she is an escort and she is a sex worker in Chicago living her best life. Okay.
If that bothers you, you can't listen to Cardi B's music.
Well, it's also, you can, like, everybody's allowed to have.
But if you're going to shame the person...
No, that's what I mean. Like, you can say, I wouldn't do that.
Absolutely.
Or I couldn't do that.
But if you diminish who the person is as a result of their job...
Right.
That's where
That's where the issues come in.
Right. And how on earth are strip clubs legal? And then there's that weird fine line of not... the whole thing's ridiculous.
So...
How come I can go get, like, a massage, very legal, just regular massage, right? Relax muscles, like, helps your body, it's super healthy. That, in and of itself, is not sex work, but sitting in a strip club, fully clothed, sitting in the back, drinking a beer, somehow is attending sex work? The whole thing is confusing.
Right. Okay. So,
anyway.
We've acknowledged that regardless, great. Doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter.
Done.
The issue here was twofold. Number one, they're spreading information that is actually either not true or unconfirmed.
Yes.
So, and that information, because of our society and the way that it's set up, could harm this person in her actual career field, depending on what it is. I don't like that. I disagree with the fact that if she is an escort, that should negatively impact her life in any way. Like,
right.
I don't agree with that personally, but that's the world that we live in right now. And so it's not okay that people were...
No, and this... So, regardless of what you're warning somebody about, if you're going to warn somebody about anything, doesn't matter what it is. Hey, don't get hit by that car. Watch out, this girl's an escort. Whatever it is, if you're doing it for your benefit and not their benefit, that fucking sucks. Because now you're manipulating that person with something that they may or not know. You're manipulating them. You're not warning them. You're trying to change their mind before they know something. She's trying to inception somehow that Brittany's a bad person into Matt's head. I don't understand. So anyway, I always thought that was a good way of framing it. Like, she's doing it for herself. She's not warning Matt.
Yeah, for sure. And as B being said, Anna could be lying about the whole thing. Like, for all we know, Brittany is just Brittany. Like, and again, it doesn't matter. Like,
also, I think they said they were saying that, like, because Brittany kissed him, she was somehow, like, using her, like, work skill set to, like, trick him. And I wrote down, like, that's not... Let's just say she is an escort. There's a sign thing. There's a whole thing. There's a plan going into it. There is so much conversation. She's not just like, ta-da, pop out of a cake. I'm an escort.
No, but what I was saying is that they were saying that if she does sex work, then she could use sex to, like, get him. But it's not different. Like, So, they're back at the house. Michelle is the only one of the new girls back at the house with the quote-unquote OG group, and the date card shows up. All of the ITMs are like, I hope Michelle doesn't get it. I hope Michelle doesn't get it. So, of course, Michelle gets the one-on-one date.
Of course.
MJ gets very frustrated. She says in her ITM, I hope she doesn't come back with a rose. It's very clear MJ's just, like Kyle said, is getting more and more frustrated, and the producers are, like, baiting into
they're
that.
her on, absolutely.
So, back to the group date.
I wrote, what's the point of the first 3 episodes? Production's manufacturing too much stuff. Everyone's bitter already. Bree and Matt still rock. I have that.
Yes.
On the group date.
Yes.
Yeah, Bree and Matt still rock.
Yes. And B-Bean, I will never take easy when it goes for standing up for people's rights. Makes me real upset. Also, this is on national television. Like,
it's always been our complaint that ABC could be a lot more responsible with what they air to millions of people.
They're not using the term escort properly, if it's true or not true. Regardless, they're using it incorrectly.
Right.
there's just so many things that they're not doing. So, then. It's time to give out the group date rose.
Right.
That happens. It's uneventful. Brie gets it. I said yay for non-dramatic people getting roses.
Yeah, I wrote duh next to it.
Yeah. And Anna continues to blame everything else and everyone else for her lack of connection with Matt.
She blamed Brittany specifically somehow around the rose thing. I think she targeted her, which I don't understand.
Now, here is where things get extra shitty.
Oh, yeah. This is when Abigail looks right in the camera. Did you catch that?
So, okay.
Do you want me to start?
Yeah.
Okay, so Anna begins speaking at Brittany. They use that term. They very intentionally use the words there. She begins speaking at Brittany. And it goes poorly immediately. She suggests that Brittany's there to harm the situation, that her intentions aren't pure. And Abigail, we get a quick shot of it. She looks directly into the camera lens, but you don't get when you're not in the moment. It's a rare thing to have where she's like, uh-oh. Brittany defends immediately, being like, she
Pause. Before Brittany responds.
Oh, yeah, good.
Anna says something
yeah.
that really, I can, feel my blood boiling.
Mm-hmm.
So, Anna tells Brittany, basically, what she's heard and that she's told women in the house.
Well, people have been asking her, hey, watch out for this girl. And Brittany first asks her, have you been telling people this in the house before anything else? That happens early, I think.
So, what?
I think it's right after...
Wait, no, but I'm...
Oh, go ahead.
Hold on, I totally just lost my train of thought.
Anna, Brittany?
Anna
said something?
Oh, yeah. So, Anna says, that's an awful thing to say about somebody, and I'm sorry.
I forgot about that.
So, in response to... Okay, so what Anna apologized for was calling her an escort. Saying that's an awful thing to say about someone. Why? Why is it an awful thing? Apologize for spreading false information if it's false. Apologize for spreading true information that's not yours if that's what happened. But don't apologize for calling someone a job title.
How dare you, therapist?
It really, it told me everything I needed to know about Anna.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Highly judgmental.
I felt so, yeah. And
it made me feel immediately bad for Brittany.
Yeah, and I agree. B-Bean says in the comments that Brittany's initial response was cringe. I agree, but and he says it was probably the shock of the whole thing. And I agree. I think that when we see her later on in the episode, when she's talking with Katie, she's really grounded and
Right. Well, what I did like, though, is that her initial response to Anna was, have you been telling the people in the house about that?
Yeah.
Because in that moment, you see it in the back of Anna's eyes, she goes, oh, I fucked up. Because in that moment, she realized that she didn't handle it well. When she realized the person who she's so upset about ends her argument with a sentence and a question, not even a sentence, just a question, you saw her deflate a little bit right there.
So then Brittany says, it's shitty to make a judgment about her without knowing her. She said, I feel like everyone is against me right now, and I know you guys don't care at all, but it's really hard. Which I thought, honestly, was a really vulnerable and loving statement after she had just been, attacked. And Victoria laughs and says, okay, then get out the house. And sits back and takes a drink of her champagne. Victoria is in my nightmares. She scares me. she is the type of girl, like, I went to camp with a Victoria. I went to school with a Victoria. I know a Victoria. And it's really hard to watch. I hope she goes home soon.
Yeah.
And yeah, Cassie says in the ITMs, Anna was smiling about talking about the rumors. Yeah. Like she was
smiling or baring her teeth.
No. She was smiling.
I know.
Like she was enjoying spreading this information.
Oh, well, yeah. She spoke about it in the sense of like power up until she realizes she's spreading rumors like a 10-year-old. Like when that balloon popped, I think it popped. I'm curious to see what happens after this. But like leading up to that confrontation that didn't go the way she wanted it to, she was emboldened by her own actions.
Absolutely.
She thought it was awesome. And then all of a sudden it blew up and I wrote down she wanted to start a lot of shit and it blew up in her face.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens.
Keep getting like Katie shots too through all of this. We got a quick cut to Katie and she's like disapprovingly looking at someone. It's great.
So then we basically back at the house, everybody's just talking about the potential rumors.
Mm-hmm.
And we go to the one-on-one date with Matt and Michelle. He says that he likes that she's a teacher and a former athlete, and it's a scavenger hunt adventure date. She is so confident.
Yeah.
They are really naturally fun together. I actually enjoyed this part of the episode. Like, I genuinely enjoyed it.
I even wrote down, it's funny that, because I agree with you, and we talked about it a little bit when we were watching it, but what's funny is that my notes for the date, because we do them in order, right? We take live notes as we go through. I started out saying, I don't really care about this very much. I want to care because, like, I had an initial good, like, sense about her, but, like, I'm so taken out of the show now. Like, who cares? It's been nothing but bullshit. Like, I don't care about a new person. And I ended the day being like, well, definitely top 3. Like, sure, she'll be in there. That's fine. It just incredibly natural the entire time. He said that he's had to work to disarm himself a lot, to be vulnerable, and it didn't seem like he had to at all here for a second.
It was really great. Back at the house in between the day and the night portion, the date card arrives. It's a group date. Mm-hmm. Katie, Piper, Serena P, Rachel, Kit, Chelsea, Jasenia, Lauren, Serena C, and MJ. And it's, are you willing to fight for love? And then we cut back to the evening portion of Michelle and Matt. And Matt is asking her, what made you want to get into teaching and education? And this was a really special conversation.
Yeah, it was really, like a really good one. Like, I don't know how to, like, rate this. Probably one of the better date night conversations I've seen on the show so far.
Yeah, he empathizes with her not being able to hug or be with her students during the George Floyd protests.
Yeah.
After George Floyd was murdered by the police. And he basically says, like, what was that like for you? Like, not being able to be with them. And she shares that they had conversations and that she had conversations with the parents of her kids. They never say the word race. I double checked. They never actually say the word race. And she was talking about having conversations about race during that date. Mm-hmm. And they aired it. So I'm really happy that they aired it. I really wish that they had gone one step further. So here's an example. They identified during the conversation that they had talked about the achievement gap and the opportunity gap, and that they both want to make changes in that. A lot of people don't know what those things are. So instead of having, similar to using a word like triggered, right? Like, a lot of people know the term, but we don't know what it actually truly means.
Right.
I think that that's what happened with opportunity gap and achievement gap. I wish that we had seen the conversation where they had that talk so that it could have educated people on what those things were, not just that they exist. And they aired a conversation about race.
Well, yeah, and the viewers are much more likely to Google achievement gap now than they were ever before.
Yes.
Because they heard the words.
Yeah.
Like, I know that Like, that's how I, like, would read when I was a kid. I'd find, like, a word I didn't know, and I'd go, like, look it up to try to understand. It was me. Anyway, so then something strange happens on this date. And I looked over at Rachel and said, this is some Ted Mosby shit right here. It's a How I Met Your Mother reference. So she quotes Maya Angelou, and he tells her that he knows what it is. She does the quote, and is quiet for a second. He responds, Maya Angelou. And she goes, you know it? And he's like, yeah, it's one of my favorites. I wrote afterwards, sploosh.
Yeah,
Michelle lost her mind in that moment.
Yeah, it was great.
Yeah,
it was great. He says that his connection with her is stronger than some of the women who have been in the house for 4 weeks, and he says that this is the type of depth that he's looking for in a woman, which I loved to hear.
Yeah.
B-Bean in our comment says, Matt sometimes asks a good question, but he does not share much about himself. So, here's a fun fact. Because the lead ends up repeating themselves often, a lot of the times on dates, because they share similar stories, right? Like, I was born here, my mom this, my blah, 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 blah. We don't actually get to see that portion of the date aired very often. We get the, like, package at the beginning of, like, here's Matt James. Then we as viewers are, like, meant to just know who he is on each date. Excuse me. Whereas with the people, they're all new each time. So we're getting their story.
Right.
So I think that's why that may feel like he asks a lot of questions, but, like, doesn't talk a lot. We're just not getting that because the production team is like, they know that information already. We don't need to tell them again. Yeah. I think that's the only reason why.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We get a brief talk between Katie and Brittany. Who, I mean, Katie, it's pretty clear to me, Katie is like the house mom. Like, she's taking care of all these girls.
Great.
Absolutely, she's taking care of everybody. And she's holding space for Brittany. Brittany tells her that her feelings are hurt, and it just really sucks how things happen. And Katie tells her, it's really hard here, and people will talk shit about you, and they will throw things out that aren't true, and they will say these things. Like, if you're going to be here, this is part of it. It's very much like the tough mother hen. Like,
and she did say, like, it needs to stop. Like, the petty mean girl needs to stop.
Oh, absolutely.
And then we cut to Matt boxing in the woods. I said, now he's lifting wood.
The workout routine he's doing is from Rocky IV, in case anyone's curious. That is a reference that I'm pretty sure they stuck in there. The tree lifting and sled running. It's in the snow in the movie, but, like, it's what it is.
I love it.
It's a Rocky reference.
So Wells and Chris Harrison are judging. They have Mia St. John, who's a world boxing champion there. Yep. I hate this date. I hate violent dates. I hate them so much. I hate
Here's
them.
my thing. We observe production getting these contestants to max tension, right? Before getting them into a violent date. Let's erase that this is intentional whatsoever. I mean, come on. It's perfectly planned for violence. Here's my issue with the violent dates. And it goes for, doesn't matter, Bachelorette, Bachelor, Paradise, Winter Games, doesn't matter. What's the measurement of when the violence gets too much? Because we've seen people break bones, and there wasn't really a problem. We've seen people assault others, and that wasn't really an issue. And then you have women doing a sport in which the only thing you do is punch each other in the face. And then when someone gets punched in the face, oh, things got too serious. They got too serious too fast. Like, everyone's really hot-headed. Like, okay, well, now we gotta stop. It's too intense. Really? They're boxing.
Like, what did you think was gonna happen?
Whoever punched who in the face did it best. She should win the date card, because the date rose, because, like, if they're I don't understand it. It doesn't. If you're gonna make them do violent dates, then either let them do it or make it like a pillow version of everything.
Which is stupid, because when we did that, then we had the lingerie pillow fight thing.
That's
Matthew
right.
makes a comment that I agree with. He says, this date was particularly bad because it was just downright violent. They even showed slow-mos of the beating. Yeah. I hated every bit of this. Like, literally every bit, and I just want to skip to the evening portion.
Yep.
I really hated it.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Okay, so we get to the group date cocktail party.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel's time with Matt. Again, we're seeing that this connection and relationship is formed, but we're seeing them talk about the relationship. We're not getting the things that are actually building the relationship. And he says to her, what do you need from me to know I want you here? And no, I don't want you to go anywhere. Mm. And I love Rachel's response. Because what she says to him is basically like, look, if it's really meant to be, like 5 new girls coming in here is not going to change us connecting. So let's just keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, like nothing.
Whatever. Like if we're supposed to be together, if we're going to be together, 5 women coming in is not going to change that. So like, let's keep talking.
Yeah.
And I loved that. The confidence was great.
Yep.
And then she said in her ITM, I had worries in the back of my mind, but I knew it was only because I hadn't talked to him for a little while. Mm. And this is the emotional regulation that we're missing in some other Bachelor contestants that we've seen in the past.
Yeah.
She's acknowledging, yeah, I had doubts. I had worries. I thought it was because I haven't talked to him. Turns out, it was. Talk to him, feel a little bit better.
Yeah.
Great. Like, that's literally just the cycle of the show, week after week after week.
Mm-hmm. We get Piper and Matt snuggling together. They talk about how hard it is to be vulnerable, but that it isn't hard to be vulnerable with him. They make out. They seem to be progressing well.
Yeah.
And then all the other stuff happens. I have it getting right to
and then we go into mean girling.
Yeah, I get the group date.
So I have Anna and Victoria are mean girling. The girls are bitching and moaning, and Katie says at some point, we got to stop this and welcome them in. They don't give her the time of day. Katie leaves the room, pulls Matt from about 6 producers, and Katie shares that she's been trying to stand up for the new women, but there has been bullying going on in the house. And she says that it is serious enough to the point that the rumors that are going around could ruin someone's life. And she says that it is just simply too much, that there's too much bullying happening. And Matt is, he's a little shocked. Like, he knew that there was some challenges, and of course there's going to be like drama, whatever.
Right.
He says, the fact that someone thinks they can bully their way to my heart, that's not how it works.
Well, and what I think it was 2 episodes earlier, he gave us the great statement that he's not about that when it comes to bullying.
He did say that. I'm not about that.
Not about it.
B-Bean says in the comments, seems the production is hiding the strong connection between Matt and Rachel. Nick Vial says that leads typically that they're a front runner very early on in the season. I agree, B-Bean. I think she is a front runner, and we're not getting like her camera time right now.
Yeah. So we get a view of next week. I wrote down crying, Stepford Wives Anna, Victoria lying, Katie says deflection, and someone is physically sick.
I wrote next week, owning up. Matt wants to create a safe space for the girls.
I enjoy the differences in our next weeks.
And I really, again, just want to like point out, it's the discussion around the show that's so cool, right? Like, what other show could we sit and talk about race, religion, sex work, dating, and psychology in an hour and a half? Like, under the same topic.
Survivor. It'd be a hard push, though, for some of those details.
It'd be really hard
It'd be tough for some of them. You'd have to get the right season. But yeah, no, there's not all the shows that have the same amount of content. Yeah. No.
Thank you all for being here.
Yeah.
We adore you. Let us know how you are.
Yeah.
And we'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.